Hi, my name is Fay Ray. We're here in my Inglewood studio, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about my ceramics and my history with the medium and the process. This is a wall that represents a collection of work and experimentation from the last 2 or 3 years, but I've been working in ceramics since I was 16. I took my first class as a junior in high school, and it's a medium that's followed me through my whole artistic career. It fulfills something in me that other mediums don't. It's very responsive, it's very sentimental, and there have been times where I haven't always wanted that in my work. I started exploring ceramics as a medium in high school, and then I took classes in my community college at Riverside Community College. I thought, all right, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to go to art school, and decided to go to Otis. And at the time, I thought they had a ceramics program, and when I got there, they really didn't. They had equipment and things, but nothing was really set up. There weren't teachers teaching it. Then I went to New York for school, continued to study sculpture and make collages and build a studio practice centered around metal and stone and photography. And in 2009, I left New York and came back to Los Angeles. I was working for Baldessari, and there was a little continuing ed, adult ed class at Wallgrove Middle School, Wallgrove Elementary, just down the street from where I was working with him in Venice. And I started to just like work on little things just to sort of like connect with the material again. And there was this very, very miserly kiln guy. Ceramicists will be familiar with the archetype, and he absolutely would not fire a kiln until it was chock full of stuff. And so I would have to wait so long to get stuff back, and it would drive me nuts. So I started to figure out ways of like getting more of a return for the weight I was forced to deal with working out of that studio. And so I started making a lot of little things. So I can make hundreds of little things, and then I get hundreds of little things back, and it just made the weight of that time feel worth it. Also because the kiln the kiln gods were requiring a lot of patience of me, I was trying to figure out ways of not having to do the glaze process, because that was yet another another kiln step, another firing step. And I started to experiment with Narikomi, which is, it's called a couple of different things in different cultures. In the US, we call it marbling. This one shows it well, where I've marbled a very dark clay and a porcelain, and then also two different clay bodies that are a little closer in color. Mostly it's been functional works that I'm just experimenting with, trying to find my way with, trying to find a voice in it, trying to find an aesthetic, a texture. And I'm trying to like cultivate textures mostly through it. It's something that runs through all my work. Like I love high volume visual noise. And so I'm always trying to find ways of like using a certain glaze or using a marbling technique to get there. Not that long ago, I was looking at pictures of Diego Rivera's studio and saw these paper mache skeletons on the wall, and I thought, okay, let me try and make that in clay. You can see how it's structured in multiple parts. You don't have to fire the whole big thing at once. You could do it in sections. It's essentially like a beading project. And I thought to myself, well, I can do that. Like use the metal. I just had it. All the parts came together in that moment, and so I started to make a skeleton. I started with the skull first. These sort of came to be when I decided to take on that whole life-size skeleton project for myself mostly. Now I'm starting to see ways of this work connecting back to that and connecting to so many other things too, especially. But here's one. Well, also this material, when you're working with it and you're discarding bits of it, it's so beautiful. It's so hard for me to just cast it away. And so I always have a collection of material sitting close by that I like then make another little random thing with. Here's another mask that developed out of the process of making these skeletons. This egg. This was an early sculptural endeavor with the marbling material, wanting to make a standalone, smaller sculpture. So here's the skull portion, and I started to like dissect how the paper mache versions were constructed, and I saw that they were segmented into different parts, and so I just aimed to recreate the parts as I saw them. And so head, shoulders, ribs, here's the abdominal, and then I had the idea to, I hadn't quite resolved in my mind how I was going to figure out the hands because those seem like delicate and small to me. And working delicately and small with clay is something that terrifies me. So I have a bunch of these and other little small cast aluminum bits. I thought maybe that's a good way of incorporating both veins of work at the same time. And so these will stand in for hands, for the hands, torso, arms, and then I'm going to use the nopal for the feet. Getting back into clay and ceramics and thinking about the figure in clay and ceramics kind of leads me to this work. I took a class with Julia Haft-Kandel, and she teaches a building big in clay workshop, and I thought, all right, let me there's been this barrier here for me in scale with the work. Let me figure out how to I can just push the limits of that with clay. And so I learned, and the subject I chose was a image of me and my kids, because I mean, there's, in my opinion, there's just not enough imagery in art of children and their mothers, and I wanted something like that for myself. And so I use that image to create a much bigger sculpture. And so in the process of taking her class, what she asks you to do is make a smaller version of the larger thing you're going to do in clay. And then that's the thing that you're going to make the larger piece from, not the image anymore. So the image goes away. And then you have this like small version of the bigger thing that you're going to make. It's so helpful. It was like this one key just blew open the doors for this medium for me. And so I made the larger piece. And she fired both. She fired the small one and the bigger one. And I loved the small. The small one had like just as much potency. And I thought, well, I've got to make more. And so I took a bunch more photos of me and my kids. Took photos of my friends and their children. And now I'm working in this series where I'm creating small sculptures dedicated to them.